I sat in my car outside Bellissimo, watching the Saturday brunch crowd filter through the front doors in their designer sundresses and expensive heels. My phone buzzed for the third time in 10 minutes. Another text from my sister. Maya, you're coming, right? Remember, dress casual. Like, really casual. We don't want anyone thinking you're trying too hard. Just blend in, okay? I stared at the message, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. The same knot I'd been carrying since I was 8 years old, standing in our living room in my robotics club t-shirt while Mom fawned over Jessica's cheerleading uniform. Look at Jessica! Doesn't she just light up a room? Mom had gushed, straightening Jessica's ponytail while I held up my first-place coding trophy, waiting for someone to notice. No one ever did. I'm 32 now, and some things never change. Jessica is still the sun our family revolves around, and I'm still the background noise. The nerdy one, the awkward one, the one who just doesn't understand social dynamics according to my mother. But here's what they don't understand. I stopped trying to make them see me about 3 years ago. I stopped explaining my work, stopped sharing my wins, stopped waiting for the pride in their eyes that never came. 2 months ago, I acquired a restaurant chain. 5 locations across the city, including Bellissimo, the trendy brunch spot where Instagram influencers flock for the perfect flat lay photo. The same place Jessica chose for her bachelorette brunch because it's the place to be seen. She has no idea I own it. None of them do. When I told my parents I was working on a big acquisition, Dad barely looked up from his golf magazine. That's nice, honey. Jessica, tell us more about this brand deal. 50,000 followers? That's incredible. When I mentioned the deal closed, Mom interrupted. Maya, before you go on about your computer stuff, did you see Jessica's engagement photos? They went viral. Over 1 million impressions. So I stopped mentioning it. I stopped mentioning anything. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I'd chosen a simple but elegant navy dress, nothing flashy, but definitely not the casual Jessica demanded. Because here's the thing. I was done shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. The restaurant looked perfect. My general manager, Carlos, had texted me earlier that morning for our monthly walkthrough, which coincidentally fell on the same day as Jessica's brunch. I'd scheduled it deliberately, though I hadn't planned what came next. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of forcing conversations you've been avoiding. I walked through the front door at 11 sharp. The hostess, Gabriella, brightened when she saw me. Good morning, Miss Chen. Welcome back. Your table is ready whenever you... Maya! Jessica's voice cut through the restaurant like a knife. She stood up from a large table near the window, surrounded by 8 of her closest friends, or rather, 8 people who documented their friendship for content. You're here! Finally! She hurried over, her smile tight. When she reached me, she grabbed my arm and lowered her voice. What are you wearing? I specifically said, casual. This is casual, I said evenly. Maya, you're in a cocktail dress. Look at everyone else, we're in sundresses and sandals. She gestured toward her table, where her bridesmaids sat in coordinated pastel outfits. You're going to be in all the photos looking like you're trying to upstage me. Before I could respond, Mom appeared at Jessica's shoulder. She looked me up and down, and I watched her expression shift from surprise to disapproval in the span of a heartbeat. Maya Chen, she said, using my full name like I was 12 years old. We specifically asked you to dress down. This is Jessica's day. It's a brunch, Mom. This is a normal brunch outfit. For someone seeking attention? Maybe. Mom's voice carried just enough volume that Jessica's friends glanced over. You've always had trouble understanding appropriate social behavior. There it was, that special blend of criticism and dismissal that my mother had perfected over 3 decades. The kind that sounds like concern but feels like a knife. Dad approached more slowly, his hands in his pockets. Maya, your mother's right. You know how important this is to your sister. Couldn't you have just what? I asked. Just made myself smaller? Just worn something that screams, please don't look at me? Don't be dramatic, Mom said sharply. No one's asking you to be invisible. We just asked you to be considerate. Jessica looped her arm through Mom's, presenting a united front. It's fine. Maya never really gets these things. Come on, let's sit down. Maya, you're at the end of the table. Of course I was. I followed them to the table, past the Instagram perfect floral arrangements I'd approved last month, past the custom menu items my head chef had developed, past the carefully curated aesthetic that made Bellissimo the hottest reservation in the city. My seat was, predictably, at the far end. Away from Jessica's immediate circle, away from the good lighting, the spot where someone could be present but not really included. I sat down and watched Jessica hold court. She was good at this, had been since we were kids. She knew exactly how to angle her face for photos, how to laugh at the right volume to seem genuine but still camera-ready, how to make everyone feel like they were part of something exclusive. So, one of the bridesmaids, Amber, I think, leaned toward Jessica. "Tell us about the wedding venue. I heard it's impossible to book." "Oh my God. It was such a nightmare." Jessica launched into the story with practiced enthusiasm. Every place was booked, or too small, or just not right. But then Derek's family pulled some strings, and we got the Riverview estate. I literally cried when we walked through it. "That's amazing," another bridesmaid chimed in. "And the catering?" "Still deciding. We're thinking of doing the tasting here, actually. This place has such good food. And the photos would be incredible." Jessica paused to sip her mimosa, then added, "Though I heard the owner is kind of impossible to work with, super picky about private events." I felt Mom's eyes flick toward me briefly, then away. She knew what I did for a living in the vaguest sense. She knew I worked in tech, that I'd sold something, but the details never interested her enough to ask. Dad cleared his throat. "Maya, how's work going?" It was the kind of question parents ask when they know they should show interest but don't actually care about the answer. The kind where they're already preparing to redirect the conversation before you finish speaking. "It's good," I said simply. "Busy. Still doing the computer thing?" he asked. "Something like that. That's nice." He turned back to Jessica. "Jess, did you decide on the honeymoon destination?" And just like that, I ceased to exist again. I watched this dance play out over the next 20 minutes. Jessica showing photos of her dress, her ring, her wedding Pinterest board, the bridesmaids oohing and ahhing at the right moments. Mom adding commentary about traditions and expectations. Dad nodding along, proud of his golden child's picture-perfect life. No one asked me about my life. No one wondered what I'd been doing for the past 3 years. No one noticed that the computer thing I'd been working on had resulted in the very restaurant they were sitting in. Then Carlos appeared at my shoulder. "Miss Chen," he said quietly, "do you have a few minutes?" The new POS system arrived, and I wanted to walk you through the installation schedule before we make the final decision. The table fell silent. 8 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me, then toward Carlos, then back to me. Jessica laughed, a little too loudly. "I think you have the wrong person. That's my sister, not Miss Maya Chen," Carlos continued smoothly. "He'd been working with me for 6 months, since the acquisition. He knew exactly who I was. I have the quarterly reports ready for your review as well. Should I bring them to your usual table, or would you prefer the office?" I could feel the exact moment understanding started to dawn. It happened in stages. First, confusion. Jessica's smile froze. "Your usual table?" Then, denial. Mom shook her head slightly. "There must be some mistake. Maya's not." Then, the crash. Dad spoke slowly, carefully, like he was testing words he didn't quite believe. "Maya, do you work here?" "Not exactly," I said. "Carlos, bless him, had impeccable timing. Miss Chen owns the restaurant, sir. She owns all 5 of our locations. She's here for her monthly operational review." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Amber and the other bridesmaids suddenly found their mimosas incredibly interesting. Mom's face went through several shades of pale, before settling on something resembling ash. Dad recovered first. "And 4 others," I confirmed. "I bought the chain 2 months ago. I mentioned it. You were reading Golf Digest. But you said you were working on an acquisition. I thought you meant, like, buying software or something. You didn't ask." Jessica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is a joke, right? You're pranking us. Maya, this isn't funny." "I'm not laughing," I said. "But you're You're a programmer. You work with computers. You don't own restaurants. I was a programmer, I corrected. Then I was a tech startup founder. Then I sold that company for $8 million. Then I diversified into real estate and hospitality. It's been a busy 3 years. The table had gone so quiet I could hear the espresso machine hissing from the bar. Mom finally found her voice. 8 million? That was the exit value. After taxes and investor payouts, I walked away with about 3 million. I used most of it to acquire this chain. It was a good investment. We're up 30% year over year. I watched the information process across their faces. Jessica looked like I'd slapped her. Mom's expression cycled between shock and something that might have been pride if it weren't mixed with obvious confusion about how she'd missed this. Dad just stared. "Why didn't you tell us?" Mom asked. And for the first time I could remember, she sounded hurt rather than critical. "I did tell you. Multiple times. You weren't listening." "No, you said you were working on something. You didn't say you sold a company for millions of dollars. I said I'd closed a major deal. You asked me not to bore you with computer stuff." Jessica slammed her hand on the table. "Stop it! Stop making this about you. This is my brunch, my celebration, and you're turning it into some reveal party for your secret life." "I wasn't planning to reveal anything," I said quietly. "Carlos came to discuss business because I have a monthly operations meeting scheduled. It just happened to fall on the same day as your brunch." "Convenient," Jessica spat. "Actually, it wasn't. I tried to reschedule. But you chose this specific date, this specific time, at the last minute. I already had commitments. So you own the restaurant and you still showed up to my brunch? What, to gloat?" "No, Jessica. I showed up because you're my sister, and you invited me. I'm here for Carlos because I take my business seriously. The world doesn't stop because you're having mimosas." Mom reached across the table toward me. "Honey, this is wonderful news. We had no idea you were doing so well. Because you never asked." "That's not fair," Dad interjected. "You're always so private about your work. How were we supposed to know?" I felt that old, familiar anger bubble up, the kind I'd spent years pushing down. "I gave a presentation at TechCrunch. I sent you the link. You said you'd watch it. We were busy. I won an innovation award from the Chamber of Commerce. I invited you to the ceremony. You said Jessica had a sponsored content shoot that night. That was a paying opportunity for your sister. I announced the acquisition at a press conference. I texted you the news article. You sent back a thumbs-up emoji. The table was so quiet you could hear silverware clinking in the kitchen." "You knew," Jessica said slowly. "When I said the owner here was hard to work with, when I said I wanted to do my wedding tasting here. You knew." "I knew. And you were just going to let me plan my wedding somewhere you own and not tell me?" "The restaurant is booked for private events," I said. "We're at capacity for the next 8 months. Even if you were my sister, I couldn't give you a date. That's what being a good business owner means, following your own policies." Jessica's voice rose. "Are you serious right now? You're going to tell me I can't have my wedding here?" "I'm telling you the same thing I tell everyone. We're booked. I can recommend several excellent alternatives." "Alternatives? Maya, this is my wedding, and this is my business." Mom cut in, her voice taking on that pleading tone she used when she wanted to smooth things over. "Surely you can make an exception for family, Maya. Just this once. It's not like it would cost you anything." And there it was. The expectation. The assumption that because we shared blood, I owed them something. That my success existed to serve their convenience. "It would cost me," I said carefully. "It would cost me credibility with every other client I've turned away. It would cost me my policies. It would cost me the respect of my staff who've watched me enforce these rules consistently." "But we're family," Mom pressed. "Exactly. We're family. And family should be the first people celebrating my success, not the last to know about it." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Now, Maya, that's not entirely fair, isn't it? When was the last time any of you asked me how I was doing? And I don't mean the obligatory how's work that you ask before talking about Jessica. I mean, really asked. When was the last time you wanted to hear about my life?" No one answered. Carlos appeared again, diplomatically clearing his throat. "Miss Chen, I apologize for the interruption, but the inspector is here for the health certification review. It can't be rescheduled. I stood up, grateful for the exit. I need to handle this. Jessica, enjoy your brunch. Everything's already covered my treat. The staff knows to take care of you. Maya, wait, Mom started. But I was already walking away, following Carlos toward the kitchen. Behind me, I heard the explosive whisper shouting that would define the rest of their brunch. I heard Jessica's voice crack. I heard Mom's attempts at damage control. I heard Dad's confused questions. I didn't turn back. Carlos held the kitchen door for me, and as it swung shut behind us, the noise of the dining room faded. The kitchen was its own world, clean, organized, purposeful. My head chef, Maria, looked up from a sauce reduction and gave me a sympathetic smile. Big family drama? She asked. You could say that. Want me to make you stress pasta? Despite everything, I laughed. Maybe later. The health inspection took 40 minutes. Then I reviewed the quarterly reports. Then I walked through each station with Carlos, discussing efficiency improvements and menu adjustments. By the time I finished, 2 hours had passed. When I emerged from the back, the brunch table was gone. Cleared, reset, ready for the next reservation. My phone, however, was not so peaceful. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages, a barrage of digital desperation that I'd been watching accumulate all morning. Mom, we need to talk about what happened. Dad, can you call me when you have a moment? Jessica, I can't believe you embarrassed me like that. Jessica again. Everyone's asking questions now. Mom again. Your father and I had no idea. We feel terrible. Jessica, caps lock engaged. You ruined my brunch. I scrolled through them all, feeling nothing. Or maybe feeling too much, so it all blurred into static. There was one text, though, that made me stop. Michael. Hey. Saw the news coverage of your restaurant inspection. Health department gave you a perfect score. Congrats, partner. Also, your sister's having a meltdown on Instagram. Want me to bring wine? Michael, my business partner from the startup days. The first person who ever really saw me, not as the disappointing sister or the awkward girl, but as someone with potential, someone worth believing in. I texted back, make it tequila. I drove to my downtown office, the headquarters for my restaurant group. It was a modest space. I didn't believe in flashy overhead, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture I'd chosen, every decision I'd made, every success I'd earned. Michael was waiting in the conference room with 2 glasses and a bottle of Patron. So, he said, pouring, want to talk about it? Not really. Want to drink about it? Definitely. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The kind of silence you can only have with someone who understands you. Don't always need to fill the air with words. Finally, I spoke. They didn't know. I figured, for 3 years, they didn't know. And the worst part? They didn't want to know. Every time I tried to tell them, they changed the subject. That says more about them than you. Does it? Or does it say I'm so fundamentally uninteresting that my own parents can't be bothered to pay attention? Michael leaned forward. Maya, look at me. You built a tech company from scratch. You grew it to 8 million in value. You successfully exited and pivoted into an entirely different industry. In 2 months, you turned a struggling restaurant chain around. You're 32, and you're already more successful than most people will ever be. And my family didn't notice any of it. Because they're blind. And that's tragic for them, but it doesn't diminish what you've accomplished. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica. Mom says I should apologize, but I don't know what I'm apologizing for. You're the one who made everything weird. I showed Michael the text. He snorted. Classic. She really doesn't get it. She doesn't want to get it. Getting it would mean acknowledging that the world doesn't revolve around her. That's uncomfortable. Another text. This time from Dad. Your mother is very upset. Can you please call her? Not I'm upset. Not we're concerned about you. Just your mother is upset, as if managing Mom's emotions was my responsibility. I'd spent 32 years managing everyone else's emotions, staying small so Jessica could shine, staying quiet so Mom wouldn't worry about sibling rivalry, staying grateful so Dad wouldn't feel guilty about the obvious favoritism. I was done. I typed out a message to the family group chat, the one where I was usually just a silent observer while they planned events and shared Jessica's latest Instagram posts. I need some space. I'll reach out when I'm ready. In the meantime, please respect my boundaries. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. Immediately, the responses started flooding in. Mom. Boundaries? We're your family. Jessica. This is so dramatic. Dad. Maya? Let's talk about this like adults. I put the phone face down on the table. Proud of you, Michael said quietly. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. You just set a boundary with people who've never been given one before. They're going to push back hard. What if I'm being unfair? Michael tilted his head. Tell me something. If a friend came to you and said their family ignored their achievements for years, dismissed their career, and then got mad when they discovered the friend was successful, what would you tell them? I'd tell them their family sucks. Exactly. My phone kept buzzing. I kept ignoring it. Over the next few days, the messages evolved. First came anger, then guilt-tripping, then bargaining. Jessica. Fine. You want an apology? I'm sorry I didn't know about your secret business empire. Happy now? Mom. I don't understand why you're punishing us for not being mind readers. Dad, your mother is crying. I hope you're satisfied. Through it all, I stayed silent. I went to work. I managed my restaurants. I had dinner with Michael and other friends, people who knew my worth because they'd watched me build it. On the fourth day, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, I answered. Maya, thank God. We need to talk. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you come to dinner? Sunday night, just family. Why? Because we owe you an apology. A real one. Please? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no, to maintain the boundary I'd finally set. But another part, the part that still remembered being 8 years old, holding that robotics trophy, hoping someone would notice, wanted to hear them say it. Okay. Sunday at 6. When I arrived at my parents' house, I found them all waiting in the living room. Mom, Dad, Jessica, even Derek, Jessica's fiancé, who I'd met exactly twice before. Mom stood first. She'd been crying, I could tell by the puffiness around her eyes. Maya, thank you for coming. We've been doing a lot of talking this week, and we've realized we've failed you. I sat down slowly, not speaking. Dad cleared his throat. Your mother's right. We've been so focused on Jessica's visible successes, the social media, the events, the things we could see and understand, that we completely missed what you were accomplishing. Jessica twisted her engagement ring. I looked you up. After the brunch, I found articles about your company, interviews, awards. Maya, you were in Forbes 30 under 33 years ago. How did I not know that? Because you never asked. I know. And I'm sorry. Jessica's voice cracked. I'm sorry I made everything about me. I'm sorry I dismissed your work. I'm sorry I told you to dress down because I was threatened by you. I've been threatened by you our whole lives, and instead of being proud of my sister, I tried to keep you small. I hadn't expected that level of self-awareness from Jessica. It threw me. Mom came and knelt beside my chair. We took you for granted. We assumed you'd always be there, quiet and steady, while we celebrated Jessica's moments. We didn't realize we were making you invisible. You didn't just make me invisible, I said. You made me feel like my accomplishments didn't matter unless they looked like Jessica's. Like, success only counted if it was photogenic. Dad nodded. You're right, and that's on us. We're proud of both our daughters, but we did a terrible job showing you that. Are you, though? I asked. Are you proud of me? Or are you just impressed by the money? The question hung in the air. Finally, Mom spoke. I'm proud that you never gave up, even when we failed to see you. I'm proud that you built something meaningful instead of just chasing validation. I'm proud that you're setting boundaries now, because it means we raised someone strong enough to stand up even to us. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a magic fix. But it was real. We talked for 3 hours that night. Really talked. I told them about the startup, about the grinding years of building something from nothing. I told them about the acquisition, about my vision for the restaurant chain. I told them about all the times I'd tried to share my life and felt shut down. They listened. Jessica cried. I was so jealous of you. You're so smart, so capable, and I always felt like I had to be perfect just to compete. I built my whole identity around being the pretty one, the social one, because I didn't think I could be the successful one. You can be both, I said. You don't have to compete with me. I know that now. But for the longest time, I didn't. As the evening wound down, Mom asked hesitantly, Is there any chance, could Jessica still do her wedding tasting at Bellissimo? I know you said you're booked, but maybe, I'll think about it, I said. Not yes, but not no. I need to check some things. Jessica's face lit up. Really? But if I make this happen, it's not because we're family, it's because I choose to support my sister. There's a difference. She nodded, understanding. I drove home that night feeling lighter but also exhausted. Setting boundaries with people you love is harder than cutting them off entirely. It requires constant communication, constant clarification of where you end and they begin. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. How'd it go? Better than expected, still complicated. Most worthwhile things are. He was right. Over the next few weeks, my family and I found a new rhythm. Mom started actually asking about my work, real questions, not perfunctory ones. Dad sent me articles about the restaurant industry with notes like, thought you might find this interesting. Jessica stopped treating me like background noise and started treating me like a person. It wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard. Sometimes Mom still redirected conversations to Jessica. Sometimes Dad still seemed more impressed by Instagram follower counts than quarterly earnings. Sometimes Jessica still made everything about her. But now, when it happened, I spoke up, and slowly, they started listening. I did end up finding a date for Jessica's wedding tasting. A cancellation opened up a slot, and I offered it to her at full price, because boundaries matter. She didn't even blink at paying. Derek called me personally to thank me and spent 20 minutes asking thoughtful questions about how I'd built my business. Turns out my future brother-in-law was more interested in my career than my own family had been for years. The tasting went beautifully. Jessica was gracious, appreciative, and actually listened when I explained why certain menu items worked better for large events. She even asked if I'd consult on the overall wedding coordination. You're good at this, she said. The business thing. You see details I miss. Thanks. You're good at the social thing. You see people in ways I don't. Maybe we could learn from each other. Maybe we could. 3 months after the infamous brunch, I stood in my flagship restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon, watching my staff prep for the evening service. Carlos approached with the monthly reports. We're up another 12%, he said. If we maintain this trajectory, we'll hit our annual goals by September. That's good work. Make sure the team knows. Already done. Also, your mother called the hostess stand. She wanted to make a reservation for Saturday. Should I put her on the priority list? I smiled. No. Regular waitlist, regular treatment. That's what she'd want. Carlos grinned. You got it, boss. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Just posted about my wedding tasting. Tagged Bellissimo. Hope that's okay? I opened Instagram. She'd posted a beautiful carousel of photos from the tasting, and in the caption, she'd written, Special thanks to my brilliant sister at Maya Chen, who owns this incredible restaurant. So grateful to have a sister who's not just successful, but generous with her success. Can't wait to celebrate our next chapter here. I screenshot it and sent it to Michael. Character development. He replied immediately. Look at that growth. Proud of both of you. I was proud too. Proud of Jessica for trying. Proud of my parents for listening. Proud of myself for holding firm on my boundaries while leaving room for repair. But mostly, I was proud that I'd stopped waiting for them to see me and started seeing myself. Because here's what I learned. You don't need your family's validation to be successful. You don't need their approval to have worth. You don't need them to celebrate your wins for those wins to matter. But it's nice when they do. And if they can't or won't, you build your own table. You surround yourself with people who see you clearly and celebrate you loudly. You create the support system your family should have been. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And then, if you're lucky, maybe they'll realize what they've been missing. Maybe they'll do the work to understand you. Maybe they'll show up in the ways you always needed. Or maybe they won't. Either way, you'll be fine. Because you've already learned the most important lesson. Your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's ability to see it. I left Bellissimo that afternoon and drove to my office. 5 restaurants, 20 million in annual revenue, and a growing empire that I'd built with my own hands. My family didn't need to understand it all. They just needed to respect it. And finally, they did.